What is your unsubstantiated theory that you believe to be true but have no evidence to back it up? My boss is trying to make me quit. Every few years, they cull the old timers. We are currently in mid-cull, but I have 5 more years before I can retire, so I am hanging on for dear life. I've come to realize my work is doing the same. They just changed the pay structure, claiming they were giving everyone raises when in fact a lot of us that have been there over a decade are making less money than we were and are making less than $1 more than a new hire. And in a few cases the exact same as a new hire. Countries have psychological issues just like people do. So if a country was humiliated and defeated in war, its people behave just as if they were abused. Not individually but at a macro level. Anakin died on Mustafar. Obi-Wan left Anakin to die on that rocky shore, and he did. When the Emperor found him, he spent that moment crouched over him, fingers on his temples. After that he orders his attendants to gather up the body and put it in life support. The Emperor had just brought him back to life. Why do I think so? There's a scene in the 3rd movie where Anakin and Palpatine are at the opera, and Palpatine starts talking about Darth Plagueis and how he was using the dark side of the Force to bring people back from the dead. Palpatine hints that he improved on his old mentor's research, suggesting that he actually can bring people back to life. If this is true, this might be why Darth Vader, despite being so strong in the Force and despite being extremely strong from his mechanical parts, never actually dares to cross him, at least in the movie canon now. The Emperor could stop keeping Vader alive at any point, which is a useful leash for keeping someone so previously strong-willed and powerful under control, no matter how many missions he sends him out on. Sure, the dark side has permeated Anakin's mind. He's too afraid of dying to do what's right. He's too attached to living, despite the wretchedness of his life. It's only when Luke is in danger that he decides there are things more important than himself, truly, and he finally does to the Emperor what he could have done all along. But as a consequence, there is no one maintaining his life anymore, and he dies, after possibly using his own force of will to live a few moments longer to say goodbye to his son. I think companies purposefully give you receipts on crappy carbon paper because the ink fades after a week and you can no longer do a return. My family's pastor has been mercy killing them and his whole congregation for multiple generations. The pastor runs a pretty big church, has lots of people to see, and if someone is really old or really sick, he usually only has time to visit them once. Far more often than not, he tells the congregation that he had some moving preacher talk with them, and minutes later they died. Content in the mercy of the Lord or some crap. This has happened with my great-grandfather and my grandfather that I know of, and many other families in the church have similar stories told about their departed family members. We're supposed to believe it's some kind of Christmas miracle, that they come to peace and the Lord takes them away to heaven. But all I want to know at this point is what that sucker is doing and how he's getting away with it. The Sony Doomsday Theory. My parents bought a Sony Trinitron in about 1974. It worked great until about 1995 or so I also became a Sony buyer. Based on how long they last, I finally have the scratch to start my own AV center, and I go with Sony. It's $19.99 or so. After I install my big screen TV, receiver VHS combo, speakers and a PlayStation and video camera, I'm all set. One of my buddies comes over and tells me a story. In the mid-90s, Sony was at a crossroads. They had foothold in America. Problem was they built their products too well, they simply weren't wearing out. So, instead of sacrificing build quality, they included a doomsday code in all their products. Don't set your clock, man. That's what starts the countdown. And bro, it's like 6-7 years. Don't worry, I silently thought balls to myself and forgot about it. Fast forward 5 or 6 years later, one day, my TV has sound with no picture. I ask my friends with the same set. Yep, same thing happened to them 6 months ago or whatever. Then, 2 weeks later, the receiver quits. A week later, the PlayStation. The whole system collapsed within a month of each other. Told my buddy later, all he says is welcome to Doomsday. People believed in dragons in ancient times because they just discovered dinosaur bones. I think of this as why Chinese dragons are different from European ones. Europeans found some dinosaur fossils. Chinese found some more snake-like reptiles fossils. I think it's also a possible origin for other creatures like griffins or cyclopses. I remember reading something on a Reddit thread on conspiracy theories, and one stuck with me. Something about Fred Phelps, Westboro Baptist, being a martyr. It referred to him being a civil rights lawyer, and how he was all big on equality and whatnot. Then he decided the only way people would listen would be to become the villain, and start an organization that just spews out hate. You wanna buy plain white socks? Buy a ton. I feel like companies, like Hanes, constantly rotate their basic, white socks so that if you buy some, then 6 months later buy more they're slightly different, and so on. This makes it harder to find matching pairs and makes you need to buy socks more often. This makes so much sense. I always get to that point where I'm like frick it, so many mismatched socks, all of these are going in the trash, then I buy new socks and repeat the cycle a year later. I know 2 people who only developed celiac after getting Lyme disease. One of them was my brother. I'm not talking gluten sensitivity, I mean, dude used to vomit blood on the daily before he cut out gluten. Before he got Lyme, he used to chow down on ramen all night. No problem. I am no scientist, but I know both conditions have to do with your immune system, and I've heard immune disorders often occur in clusters. For example, if you have IBD, you might have rheumatoid arthritis. My theory is that there's a link between Lyme and celiac. I have Lyme disease and just got diagnosed with celiac. I never thought about them being related at all. I guess that's something I should have told my doctor. I believe that Vanessa Carlton and Michelle Branch are secretly the same person. Making my way downtown, walking fast, faces pass and I'm Michelle Branch. I'm crazy and everyone else is just patronizing me. Oh crap, he knows. The minions were not in the original script for Despicable Me. I believe Cinco Paul and Ken Derio had a screenplay about a supervillain who adopts kids for nefarious reasons and falls in love with them, and DreamWorks executives sent it back with the note that said they liked it but they wondered if they could add this minion character they've been working on. Something brainlessly simple and made to be put on lunchboxes and in arcade claw games. Cinco and Ken said yes, added a few scenes that neither add or subtract from the original plot, and replaced a few swinging by a rope parts with swinging by a chain of minions. I totally believe this. People with color blindness have better night vision, because we learn to differentiate visually based on shape and outline, not color. So in the dark, people with normal vision lose a significant part of their vision, whereas color deficient people have adapted to not use that part already. North Korea did not hack Sony. The government invented selfies to build their national facial recognition database. Don't forget to toss in the cell phone fingerprint scanners now. Kane is not the Undertaker's real brother. You lie. In the Bush's baked beans commercials, there's always a dog trying to tell the secret ingredient to the audience, but the human shuts him up before he can say it. The dog is trying to tell us the horrible secret that the secret ingredient is dog. You need to put together a YouTube video about this. I work as a janitor event staff at my state university. One night after close, the 3 regular bums were walking around. Manager walks around to kick people out of the building. He saw 2 of the 3 regulars walk out of the men's bathroom. Puzzled, he walks into the bathroom and in the last stall finds the 3rd beat to death. He took a picture of it and showed it to me. His face was all purple and beaten, black eye, the whole crap. Cops arrive and we get emergency emails from the university that there was an aggravated assault. The director the next day announced it was an unattended medical death. The whole vibe here at work is it's trying to get covered up. The fact that we can tell the students who spend a lot of time studying here till very late what really happened is bulls. That man got murdered. You could totally sell that story to a local news station. The magazine Cosmo targets women and single women. It gives dating relationships advice in their magazines. If they're targeting single women with their magazine, they must give crappy relationship advice to continue to sell to the single women of the world. I think it's more advice of the tell them what they want to hear variety. Everyone wants a shortcut, so their bad advice is all of the here's the magical shortcut that will make him love you without putting in any real effort variety. Obviously, it's bad advice, but they aren't specifically pruning good advice. The reason women's yarn pockets are so small non-existent is that they have a deal with the purse companies. The Great Dental Conspiracy. Scientists have figured out how to restore enamel and prevent cavities, but they cannot release that information because it would result in an economic depression. The entire industry around teeth, starting with dentists, their offices, hygienists, insurers and many more behind the scenes people would lose their jobs, so they just shelved it. I refuse to believe that we can send a freaking robot to Mars and do hand transplants but cannot figure out the enamel and cavities issue. That deja vu is the result of things related to memory happening in the wrong order. Normally, experiences first enter short-term memory and later get pushed into long-term memory. When you remember an event, you pull it from long-term memory. Sometimes, however, the experience enters long-term memory first. As it enters short-term memory, our brain says, hey, this is already in long-term memory, let me retrieve it for you. The brain systems recognize it's come from long-term memory, which implies it's already been experienced, which gives us the creepy feeling. I choose to accept that I died and that is the last checkpoint I reached, so that's where I respawn. I think almost everything about the lives of young pop stars, romances, drug abuse, run-ins with the law, etc., is pre-scripted and arranged by the company that holds their record deal. Basically, their entire public life is one huge performance until the public forget about them. I wouldn't say everything, but I do think that the public seriously underestimates just how much PR teams control celebrities. Pi is the serial number of our universe, and there is a pi for every single other possible dimension. Other universes have different pi values, and thus have completely different structures and geometry. At least I believed it for a second when I was mega blazed. And E is the random seed. If the world was ending, then the government would know but wouldn't tell us crap. That my neighbor has the ability to turn into a goat. Let me explain. I've only ever seen this man once in my life. It was one morning when I left the house to go to school, when I saw him just standing in his front yard not doing anything. He was just standing there, beer belly hanging out of his dirty white singlet. He was wearing shorts and sandals. Bald head except for a little Homer Simpson fluff. That was 6 years ago. I never saw him before that or after that. To this day. This is where it gets weird. One evening I came back from a catch up with a friend at a local McDonald's restaurant, and there it was. A goat. Just standing there where he stood about 3 years earlier. And this was at about 11-12 at night. It didn't occur to me to take a photo of it as proof until I realized how frustrating it was that nobody in my world believed me that I had found a goat in the middle of the night. I wanted to prove to my friend so bad that I found a goat that I've gone outside in the middle of the night so many times in the hope of finding Goat Man in his goat form once again. But he knows what he's doing. That time I saw the goat was roughly 3 years ago. I haven't seen either the goat or the man in that entire time except for those 2 occasions. I always knew there was something fishy about that house. The way the light was always on, even at absurd times of the night. The way the grass was never cut, but also seemed to never grow. The way the rundown van with the broken windshield never ever moved. And most of all, the way nothing ever seemed to come in or out of that house. But I know he lives there. Goat Man lives there. Maybe the man died years ago, and his pet goat has been roaming every night since, keeping the grass down. There could be a corpse next door. Radio astronomer here. I believe that we will find alien life in the next few decades, not via radio signals but by finding artificially made chemical signatures in the atmospheres of extrasolar planets combined with free oxygen. The tech is at the point where we can measure some chemical composition in extrasolar planet atmospheres already, so it's just a matter of time. I confess I find this more likely than a radio signal from the depths of space scenario, just cause that's such a random situation. But I'll keep listening just in case they call. But this isn't really lacking evidence. Our tech has been advancing rather predictably, and there's no reason to believe spectrography won't get good enough to detect oxygen in exo-atmospheres soon enough. It really seems like a matter of time. So excited. When you're sick, if you're craving a certain food, you should eat that food. There's probably a reason you're craving it. I'm not a doctor or scientist or anything. It just makes sense to me. My best friend is a Chinese sleeper cell. He's the first generation to be born in the US. His family has long ancestral ties to the Chinese government and military. Many of his family members are still in the Chinese government at a city and regional level. He himself is going to law school and wants to be a politician. He was in the Marine Reserves for 4 years. He is the perfect embodiment for the American dream, but with his ties back to China make me assume that once he is president he will turn us into a communistic state. Not that I won't still vote for him anyway. Major elections in the US have been tampered with or can be rigged. It's not who votes that counts, it's who counts the votes. Stalin. Ken Lay is alive. The man died right before he was going to go to prison. There wasn't a proper autopsy, and his body was quickly cremated. He didn't get to appeal his sentence, so his conviction was thrown out and his family got to keep the money. He screwed the whole American economy and asked his employees to contribute 100% of their retirement savings towards his fraudulent business model while pulling his own money out. He had the means, the motive, and didn't have a soul. Suckers alive. Lobelia Sackville Baggins took the spoons. My dad has a hypothesis about astrological signs. The different constellations show up at different times of the year, and back when we were hunter-gatherers, the time of year highly corresponded with your available diet, and that this could, in effect, have a contributing role in your personality. Shrugs. Hypothesis: ghosts are repelled by catchy music. Evidence: no one has ever seen a ghost while listening to Barbie Girl by Aqua. The amount of advertising I witness for chewing gum seems totally unsupportable by the amount that the American public, or even the entire world, can possibly be spending on gum. This leads me to assume that what I'm seeing is actually a constant campaign of dog whistle proxy propaganda being disseminated by a shadowy cabal of powerful families of chewing gum magnates that secretly control all geopolitical events. The American big gum players are engaged in an endless, invisible war between each other and Chicle Internacional and the Dusseldorf Gumworks. The Vietnam War was really just a flare in the ongoing feud between J. Charles Wrigley and Joseph Bazooka Joe Hearst. We've had the technology and know how to meet our energy needs free of coal and oil for decades, but to keep their cash cow status quo alive, energy companies have been systematically paying off legislators and regulators, buying up and quietly burying patents, crushing startups, and killing innovation. When the oil finally does start running out, these same companies intend to slowly roll out the inventions and techniques they've been suppressing for years and turn a huge profit. But they will only do so the millisecond oil and coal cease to be profitable. Acne medicine gives you acne. I forgot to bring my acne medicine on a week-long trip when I was in high school, so I used just regular soap. Acne was gone by the end of the week. This one is nothing compared to some of the other ones here, but I don't think the close door button on elevators works. I believe the open door button works, but I think the close door button is just for people to mash until the doors actually close on their own. It depends. The elevators in my apartment, when they're set for moving, will not close the doors until someone holds down the door close button, specifically so that the doors don't close as you're trying to move furniture in or something. But as for regular day-to-day elevatoring, you may be right. Everyone is fricking each other behind my back. You have been visited by the romantic doggo. Comment love is magic so you never fall in the friend zone. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.